reluctantly agrees for diplomatic reasons. And besides, she's been learning that not all Cardassians are bad. It's not like they're going to send Dukat.
Ah, Major Kira. Ready to leave whenever you are.
See what happens when you cut your fish meditation short, Kira? The prophets punish you. You might be wondering why he's here, since there was that regime change. Well, Dukat's got a good sense of self-preservation, so when he sensed the winds of change blowing, he switched sides. So he not only wasn't removed from power, he was in fact promoted to chief military advisor. Not exactly a good first impression for this new government. We wanted someone who would be familiar with Bajorans, so we sent someone who regularly killed them. This point is really beaten home as we hear the two discuss the occupation. See, the subject of the resistance, because that's who Kira is searching for, a member of the resistance, leads Dukat to compliment her, but it's part of a twisted, self-congratulatory compliment.
I know you find this hard to accept, but I believe that in some ways the occupation actually helped Bajor.
Which part? The massacres or the strip mining?
Let's look back over Dukat a bit to see why he'd be dumb enough to actually say that. I'm not referring to the argument, I'll get to that in a second. I mean actually voicing it to a Bajoran freedom fighter. In defiance, he agreed to an extremely one-sided deal for information he could use against political enemies. Before that, he was trying to preserve peace in the DMZ to help him rise again. And in the beginning, he left DS9 because the Bajoran occupation had ended, and the implication was that it was due to his failure. It points to two predominant characteristics of Dukat: ambition and ego. He wants to have power, that's a given, and we'll see more of that as this review goes on. As for ego, well, he sought validation from Sisko, and now is doing the same from Kira. I think it's because he wants to believe that everything he did was right. He wants to believe that despite the massacres and the strip mining, he did right, and he's looking for any reason to justify it, and he wants them to agree. Now, I may be opinionated, but I always try to be fair, so let's give the straw man his day. Is Bajor stronger after the occupation? Possibly yes. They're united, they're stronger. That doesn't mean they have Dukat to thank for it. As Kira said, whatever happened was in spite of and not because of the Cardassians, because all the Cardassians were an enemy. And it misses the other half of that, which is that Sisko, the guy Dukat wants to approve of him and the one the Bajorans look up to, has gone a long way towards ensuring that the Bajorans remain united and strong after the occupation ended. That which does not kill me does not make me stronger. I make me stronger when I refuse to let it kill me. Meanwhile, in the B-plot is the issue of romance, because Sisko's dick is an important enough character to occasionally need its own episode. He's been seeing Cassidy Yates, a freighter captain, but who's coming with big news that she's been offered a job for the Bajorans, so she can stay on the station rather than maintaining their long-distance relationship. Wow, sounds like a big step. At dinner, she reveals that she did get the job and is thinking about staying on the station full-time. She asks Sisko what he thinks.
I just meant it's a big step.
Uh-oh. I think that big step might have just been into a pile of dog crap.
I'm proud of you. This job.
Forget about the job.
Oh, yeah, that's always the sign. Let's cut to a less volatile situation. Now, that's the first time anyone's ever described Kira and Dukat that way. The presence of Raska doesn't help.
The voice of the new Cardassian, so compassionate, so understanding. Almost makes you forget that 5 years ago he was working Bajoran to death in forced labor camps and shooting anybody who tried to stop him. Almost makes you forget.
But he is handy with the tricorder, confirming that this is indeed from the ship they're looking for, and Raska tells them where to look for it. Naturally, the planet has plot radiation that will prevent beaming, so they have to land and head towards the remnant on foot, and unfortunately go the long way around, as it's completely covered by sand, wiped clean by the wrath of God. Meanwhile, back on the station, an even more dire matter is being considered.
It's a big step. That's all you said.
Quark steps in to offer his advice.
If she says she doesn't see you enough, threaten to see her even less. If she wants more gifts, take back the ones you've already given her. It's all about control.
What's creepy is that while I was getting some background information about this episode, completely unrelated to what Quark said, I ran across a blog about this from the opposite gender that was essentially the same idea as Quark had, how to establish control over your man with these kinds of weird head games. You know, I continue to remain amused when people unwittingly advance Ferengi ideals in different forms, and it shows just how much of it is still in us. Left, right, center, male, female, doesn't matter. Kira and Dukat start checking the wreckage, discovering evidence of weapons fire and numerous graves, but no signs of the survivors. They need to check the remains, but Dukat doesn't want Kira involved since it would desecrate the Cardassian dead if they were viewed by an alien, which doesn't apply in reverse because of the Bajoran religion.
How did time lessen for you? What remains after death is but a shell, a sign the pod has begun its final journey.
At first you might think, wow, Dukat seems to have at least a passing interest in Bajoran spirituality. Maybe he's not so bad after all. But then you might recall what Sisko said about how Cardassians spend their childhood disciplining their minds so they can have near-perfect recall. So, for instance, a man who regularly orders mass murders might at some time hear a useful proverb about the dead from the Bajoran clergy to justify how they might dispose of the hundreds of bodies. As Shakespeare wrote, "The devil can cite scripture for his purpose. An evil soul producing holy witness is like a villain with a smiling cheek, a goodly apple rotten at the heart. Oh, what a goodly outside falsehood hath." If you think I'm being unfair, then realize that Dukat's been engaged in deception this whole time. When she wanted to know why, of all the Cardassians, they would send a butcher like him on this olive branch mission, he said it was because the ship was his responsibility, so he had to come. In fact, he most likely insisted that it be him because one of the Bajorans on board was his mistress. One of several mistresses that he had, I should add. And the defector and all his kids, well, I think Dukat has a fly that can only zip down. Anyway, he's here to check on her and their daughter. When he spoke about why it's often helpful to have a personal stake in a mission, he was speaking just as much about his own needs. There's no sign of what happened to the survivors, but it's possible that they were hauled away by the attackers for slave labor, so they tracked them using subcutaneous implants the Bajoran resistance fighters might have, because one thing you want in your undercover group is the ability to be easily tracked. They set up camp in an old cave for the night, where Dukat sits on a sand spine, forcing Kira to yank out this thing sticking out of his butt.
Ouch.
Yowza, you're not going to have a prick like that in your ass again until Wayun shows up. Oh yeah, throw it where you can't see it. That's good planning. The purpose of the entire cave scene, and really the episode, is to continue to show us a side of Dukat that we haven't seen, if you know what I mean. Kira's managing to have a good laugh over this, showing that they are bonding in classic buddy movie fashion, and perhaps later they can high-five and then jump a rising drawbridge in a sports car together. After they laugh at Dukat's ass penetration, the subject turns to his mistress. Kira reveals that she figured out that his illegitimate daughter was also on board from the manifest, and he confesses that it's true. But it's not what it seems. Dukat's not here to rescue her. He's here to ensure that she dies here. And that's not a spoiler from later on. He just comes right out and says it. Not a good move, Dukat. You're going to have to shove an entire cactus up your butt for Kira to get past that little peek into your diseased head. Now, why do I say that about Dukat? Because he believes he's doing her a favor. He doesn't believe she can go back to Bajor because half Cardassians would be rejected, and going back to Cardassia is not an option, so putting her down is the only kind thing to do in his mind. When Kira doubles back to that not an option thing, it's because it would hurt Dukat's career, and, well, obviously that's not even worth considering. Oh, just an aside, Halimo must be roasting in that costume. Well, worst of all, there's nowhere to sweat but inside it. They track the signal to a dilithium mine, where they are indeed working as slave labor for the Breen. Neither one wants to leave the other here alone, and going back together is not an option because, who knows, the slave labor force has been here for 6 years, might just get relocated during the hours they'd be gone. So they have to devise a plan together. Okay, step one, get some Breen outfits. And that's obviously so easy, we don't even need to see how that would happen. Let's just move on. It'll save us some time for Jake to talk to his dad about his love life. Kira's friend is dead, but Ziyal is still alive, so while a firefight breaks out, Dukat goes looking for her. He finds Zial, who's pleased up until the point he pulls a gun on her, but Ducat hesitates. He's torn between his parental